Welcome to First in Future, where emerging ideas take flight. This weekly podcast is presented by North Carolina State University's Institute for Emerging Issues. And now to our host, the director of the Institute for Emerging Issues, Leslie Boney.
At our Emerging Issues Forum in Charlotte in October, we offered a spot on our podcast to the person who tweeted the most over the course of the day. Our thinking was that everybody who attends the forum is probably interesting and that whoever tweets the most would probably have a lot to say about a lot of things. Now, there are possible gaping holes in this theory, and it could have gone horribly wrong, except it didn't. Oh no, it didn't. Instead, it led us to the remarkable story of Sherri Allgood, a teacher and minister, and now the mayor of the town of Troy in Montgomery County, right in the center of North Carolina. Sherri had a passion for her community as long as she can remember, but she never thought about running for office until a day in 2014 when the KKK decided to have a rally in downtown Troy. She took her children with her so they could, as African Americans, witness the event.
I wanted them to see what was actually happening. And I looked over at my 12-year-old son at the time, and he had tears coming down his face. And, I'm thinking this is a learning experience. Look, here's the KKK. But to him, it impacted him so much. And I knew that I had to do something.
Sherri did something. She ran as a write-in candidate for mayor in 2015, then ran a formal campaign in 2018. To the shock of almost everybody, she defeated a 19-term mayor who'd been in office for 38 years, 419 votes to 406. In a town with 47% poverty, she says she ran to help those who've been left behind. Looking back on it, it wouldn't be hard to say she was born to run.
As a matter of fact, I'll start with my own father. My father, who is, he's a pastor right now in the Mount Gilead area, and he pastors a Baptist church, and he pastors in the same church where his father pastored, so my grandfather, who was the late Dr. B.M. Harris, he was a really big, he was big in the community. He was an activist, a pastor. Pretty much you would call him Montgomery County's pastor, because anytime there was a funeral, anytime there was something that occurred, my grandfather was always there. And he was a business owner, entrepreneur. He was the very first African American who owned a plane here in the county to actually have his pilot license. And he had gotten a plane. He actually had to sell the plane because during the time where he was living, there was, a lot of issues that he had come across. So he wasn't able to renew his pilot license. But he had his own newspaper. He had his own lumber company. He's just a jack of all trades. He built his own home, just very community oriented. Now, his father, I don't know much about his father, but his father's father, as a matter of fact, his father's mother actually was the daughter of the late Peter Green. And Peter Green was actually the one who founded one of the board of trustees of the only African-American high school that was here in Montgomery County called Peabody High School. And so he was one of the founding trustees. So that is an exciting lineage, because now I'm actually the mayor of in the town where Peabody was founded.
So you grew up in a family where you were not a go-along, get-along family. You were a get-things-done family.
Oh, yes, definitely. Very community and church-oriented. Even my father and my mother, both of them were very involved, heavily involved in community organizations, meeting with young people. That's where I get, my tenacity from and my community focus from, because that's what we were raised in. And we were raised to care more for others than, think of others more than we think of ourselves. And so just being able to go out and help our neighbor.
You grew up, went to Fayetteville State, and then took on what I think is the biggest challenge in education, which is the middle grades.
Yes.
Can you describe why you decided to become a teacher and how that job migrated over time?
Right. Well, even as a young girl, I was a choir director, so of the youth choir at the age of 12 years old. So at 12 years old, I was directing a choir of youth. Some older than I was. Most of them were my cousins, and for them to even listen to what I was saying, it's just phenomenal in and of itself. But so I have always loved working with youth. So by the time I ended up going into, I actually graduated with a biology degree, a minor in chemistry. So I worked for the state at the Constable Lab for the Department of Agriculture in Raleigh. And I was in there for a few months, and you know, you're in this dark basement testing fertilizer, cow fertilizer, manure. And it was a young lady there who actually is now my pastor. And she said, "Why are you even here? I know you have other things that you want to do." And at the time, she didn't even know me, you know, in that realm. And so at that time, she said, "Why don't you check into becoming a teacher?" And I said, wow, that is a really good idea. So I went in as a lateral entry teacher, put in applications here in Montgomery County, and got a job as a middle school teacher. And I'm telling you, it was just, I mean, that age group, middle grades, they are learning themselves. You know, you can pretty much not only shape their thinking in the realm of helping them to become productive citizens in society, but you can also learn so much from them as well, being able to hear what they have to say and just, you know, getting their input on overall life.
You evolved over time into becoming a student advocate and took on the issue of technology in the schools. Can you talk about how you identified that issue and why it's so important?
Well, and technology is very important. It's something that all of our students should have access to. Here in the county, we have I know in Troy itself, we have 47% poverty rate. And so what was occurring during the time whenever I became that student advocate is parents were calling us as a ministry asking if we could help pay their technology fees. So they needed the technology, but they didn't have the money and the finances to pay, like, for broken screens and so forth. And so at that point, it became okay, our students need this technology, but they're not having the funds in order to maintain, you know, this technology. So at that point, I became, you know, a voice. I was on one of the news stations saying, you know, listen, we have to do something about this because our students do need technology, but at the same rate, they don't need that extra burden, that cost burden.
So you came up with an insurancebased solution.
I did. I asked them. The school system had insurance before, but for some reason, I don't know what happened, but they were not able to carry it the next year. And that's whenever the students incurred all of those fees, and over like $16,000 worth of fees. And so that following year, you know, I was just going, you know, hitting it time and time again, and they were able to come up with a plan which was feasible to all of our students, which included, you know, paying every month on some things. So they were very flexible, and I appreciate the school system for working with the community in that manner.
So you've got a fairly complicated life. You're working in the schools, you're pastoring a church, and somehow or another it occurs to you that you should take on a mayor that has been mayor forever, a basically 38-year mayor. How did you get that idea that was even possible?
You know, it's amazing because over the years I've spoke, you know, as a speaker, I would encourage people, you know, get involved in your communities, you know, make sure if you see anything occurring in your community, you have a voice. And that was the whole thing, you have a voice. So back in 2014, the Ku Klux Klan was actually in the town of Troy where I reside. And at that point, I'm looking and I'm saying, wow, how did we get here? You know, we're in the 21st century and we're still having to, you know, I have my children out there, and we did take them out there to see what was going on because I wanted them to see what was actually happening. And I looked over at my 12-year-old son at the time, and he had tears coming down his face. And, I'm thinking this is a learning experience. Look, here's the KKK. But to him, it impacted him so much. And I knew that I had to do something. I had to show that, not only am I going to speak, but I need to be in a position and a place that if this were to occur again, that we as a community can come together and say, listen, we don't agree with this. We're standing against it. And so I decided to run as a run-in that year, that following year in 2015. I didn't quite make it. I got 117 votes. The incumbent, he had 238 votes, I think, at the time. So as a write-in, I'm like, oh, wow, they actually spell my name so that I could win. And so from that point, I said, you know what? I'm going to put my name on the ballot in 2018. And I did, and I won.
So you started off thinking about wanting to prevent future recurrence or appearance of Ku Klux Klan, but you started reading the town code and you developed a whole platform. What were the big issues you felt like needed to be addressed? Well,
the biggest issues going back with the poverty level, because, Troy being 47% poverty rate, and I'm looking and saying, okay, we have a lot of potential in our town. Beautiful town. Troy is so beautiful, so quaint. You go in different places and you're smiling and waving and so forth. So the people have a pure heart, just want to have a good quality of life. And so that was my platform, improving the quality of life for all of our residents. And so looking at economic development. So that mobility piece is what we're really stressing at this time, making things available for the people to be able to have jobs that will pay livable wages. Because it's not that they're not working, it's that they're working, but those funds are not enough to sustain their lifestyle.
Tell me about your strategies for workforce development, because I know that's one of the things you ran on. What are you seeing that you think could make a meaningful difference for those folks who are working hard but aren't able to get ahead because of the sorts of jobs they have?
Right. Well, the training portion of it, because even we have Wright's Food, which was currently in Troy now, but AmeriCal actually purchased them. And so they are bringing $23.6 million, I think it is, to our town. And one of the things that they're doing is they are working and partnering with our community college in order for them to receive the training. So these trainings, they are able to go in making around $40,000 a year. Now, our median right now is about 20-something thousand. So that is over half of what the residents, have available at the time. So being able to work with these companies and say, okay, listen, we'll train the workforce for you all. Just come in, with the partnership with the community college and with the new school that's opening, with the CTI courses that are being offered, the early college, all of these are pretty much heading us in a good direction in order to build up our workforce.
Montgomery County on the sign as you come into the county says a golden opportunity.
Yes.
And it sounds like you're trying to define different niches of golden opportunity for people.
Right.
You talked about the skilled trades also as an important area that you're working on.
Yes,
and
yes.
Trying to figure out ways to get more people training in those. Why is that an important part of the mix?
Well, it's important because if they're not skilled, then it's difficult for our manufacturing companies or any companies that are coming into our town to actually have, the workforce that is needed in order to sustain their businesses. So building up those skill levels. And we know that everybody is not, college bound. We know that, especially in small towns, people just want to get by. They want to do what they enjoy, and they want to, be able to sustain their family with that. And so making sure that we identify not only what they're good at, but to bring that out so that they're able to enjoy the job that they have while providing for their family. So those skills are vital to any economy.
So workforce has clearly been part of it. You've identified the south side or the bottom area of Troy as a particular point of emphasis. What are you doing there? What's your thinking on the folks there?
Well, okay, so looking at the south side, which they've called a bottom. I don't like to call it a bottom because if you say it's a bottom, then that means there's a top. And so we want to make sure that we have equity throughout our town. And just to be truthful, over the years, the Peabody community has not received those same privileges as other areas throughout the town. And it was once a thriving. If you go through and you speak with some of the our seasoned citizens, they would tell you about all of the businesses that were once there in Peabody community, the pride that they had in their community. And so, and what's happening now is with those businesses that we may have about 2 or 3 businesses in the South Side now. So what I would like to happen, and I'm sure others as well, is to see a uniformity throughout our town. So when you ride up in North Main Street, you have the quaint little businesses, the coffee shops, the boutiques. I would love to see that in the South Side area as well, to be able to extend our Main Street so that when you come in Troy, you have all of these businesses that are going from South Side all the way up to North Side and bringing the town together to unify it. And I think that's a key piece. If we can cross over these barriers, that once was, if we can, just join it together and make it one Troy, then that will benefit all of us as a community.
That's a hard transition. There's been this one person in leadership for 38 years, and then you come in, and you're talking about different things.
Right.
Somebody said, getting elected is hard, governing is harder. What's that been like for you so far?
Well, okay, so it's a learning curve here. And so in the beginning, I come in with ideas that I feel will improve. Now, not to change Troy, because Troy is great, but my platform was making a good town better. Right. So not only so we know that Troy is a very good town, but there's improvements that need to be made. So coming in, I have ideas. Let's do it. And so there are systems that have already been developed and maintained and seem to work for some. Now, those systems that are working for some, if I come in and say, let's change the system to say, listen, it's been working for 38, 39 years. Why do we want to change it? And at that point, try to get attention and say, listen, there is another piece to Troy. There are other portions and parts of Troy that need to be focused on as well. And I have been getting some pushback concerning that. But at the same rate, I think it's a means of fear of if we change anything, then life as I know it may change, but not realizing that there's an improvement for all. Because right now there's a bypass. They have bypassed Troy. And if we don't bring our best out at this moment, then there's some threats against our town. And we want to make sure that we're pulling together as a town in order to support one another, to build each other up so that we can say, hey, there's a town right over here. You don't need to bypass it. You can actually come through and get that Troy that we want to offer you all.
It's a challenge for towns throughout the state when the bypass goes up, because if you've been accustomed to people driving through town and stopping along the way, you've now got to come up with a reason for them to get off the bypass and slow down and be part of that.
Exactly. And we're working toward that. I have a good outlook on some things that are happening in Troy, and that is going to happen. And I believe that it's going to, bring some attention to Troy and bring them on in town.
You could have stayed on the sidelines, and a lot of people could look at what's going on in their town and be frustrated by it and complain about it. But you chose to get engaged. You chose to spend a huge amount of time on this new job that I'm guessing pays little to nothing. Why did you choose to do that, and what would your advice be to other people who are looking at what's going on in their communities and frustrated by it?
Well, the thing is that we have to know that we have a voice. Now, that voice can look different in many different ways. My voice was I ran for mayor so that I can be that voice in that capacity. Others, they're able to be a voice in the school systems. They're able to be a voice even with coming out and saying, listen, this is happening in our community. We don't want it here. We want to change it. So it's just a matter of not only am I going to stay behind closed doors and have my conversations that will save the world, but I'm going to get out and I'm going to engage in my community. I'm going to engage with my elected officials. I'm going to say, this is what I'm experiencing, and this is the things that I want to see happen in my community, not just for me. And that's where I came from. I didn't just run for me. I ran for those who are not even born right now. I want them to step or be birthed into a world that is going to accept them, not for the color of their skin, that's not going to, or reject them, and not going to push them over to the side, but that's going to embrace them and the gifts and the talents that they have to offer to their community. And so my advice is that we have to let our voices be heard. Let it be heard, because once we come out and give our voice, then that can ignite others. And I believe me winning mayor, I may not see it visibly, but I know that it has paved the way for others that were looking, to do something in this capacity as well.
Congratulations on what you've done so far. Let's talk about the future of North Carolina and your ideas for that. What's the biggest issue you think we're facing over the next 5 years, and what can we do about it?
Well, what I'm seeing gentrification is one of the biggest highlights. And as an elected official, we really have to do our research and identify these threats, because, even I as an elected official, the first thing I wanted to do in Southside is come on, let's bring in some businesses here. Let's, get these dilapidated and these blighted buildings. Let's take them down. Let's, increase the values and all of that. And so, looking at it from that standpoint, it seems as if it's an improvement to the community. We're coming in to improve the community. But what we don't realize is that there's families that are struggling just to pay what they are paying now. So what we may be causing is a migration. If you think back with the Great Migration during the time where, the African Americans were dealing with so much, and they had to run away to get away from the oppressiveness that was occurring. And so if we're not careful, we can bring that same migratory activity to occur, and really we wanted to improve it, but who are we improving it for if we're running the very people out that we're saying that we are trying to help?
That's an issue for small towns and big cities all over the state.
Right.
Tell me something you've read recently that is meaningful to you, that you'd recommend to others. I don't know if you want to know this book or not, but it's called White Rage. Uh-huh.
Now, I can't recall who the author is, but it's full of history based upon the African American experience, as well as the white experience as well. And it shows us why we are where we are today. And I'm reading, I was never a history person in school. Never, ever. I'm a biology, science, math. You can give that to me all day. So as I'm reading the history and I'm looking at our incorporation of the town of Troy during 1852. So every time I'm hearing about, okay, things that happened in the 1800s, and I'm saying, okay, so whatever was happening, Troy was here. Like Troy, may have been an active participant, may have been a part of that during the time. So I'm looking at that, listening, it's an audible, so I'm listening to the book, and I'm looking and saying, okay, reflecting, why are we where we are today? Why are we still fighting these battles that we're fighting today? And with white rage, it is showing even a struggle for power. And some of the things that I'm experiencing today, I can point in that book and say, wow, that's what's going on now. I'm just, thinking everybody loves me and I'm trying to do the best. But there's some systems that have been put in place that if we don't face and say, look, this is a part of those systems that have been created, that we really don't have to participate in, that we have the power to say, listen, no, that's done and over with, that we all have a right now to liberty, to life, to like property. These are all our rights through the Constitution. And those constitutional rights belong to all of us, not just some of us.
There's this perception that life is a zero-sum game, and anytime somebody gets something, that means somebody else is losing something, and people don't perceive the potential for win-win in life. And instead they see, if somebody else is getting something that they didn't have before, that must mean I'm losing.
Wow.
Tell me somebody we don't know right now that 20 years from now is going to be doing something amazing. Well, besides you. You could still be mayor.
I could be, but I'm going to tell you one person who is up and coming and that some people know about, but not all. And that is a little girl named Joy Allgood. Now, this is my daughter. My daughter, I believe 20 years from now, she's already told me when she's of age, she's planning on running against me as mayor.
I wonder if that's happened before.
I don't know, but I hope it doesn't start with me. Because I do not want to beat my daughter. But
you have to lose to somebody, though. That's who you want to lose to.
Exactly. But I told her I would pass the baton over to her. But she is very much, she's an activist in her own right. They had a principal who was removed and they didn't know why. And what she did was she made a sign and she went into the school and she sat in the school hallway with her sign saying, hire or whatever. I don't know what the sign said. But so the school called me and said, you're going to have to, we're trying to work with her because she's a good student, because she's an all-A student. She's now at the early college, but they said, we don't want to suspend her. We don't want it. So can you please talk to her or whatever? And so I did talk with her, and but I supported her 100% because she knows that she has a voice and she's very involved. She knows what's going on with me as mayor. We talk about the experiences that I do have, even paving the way for her because it's something that she's quiet at times. But if you just knew what was in her mind and what she was thinking, you would say, wow, one day she's going to be dangerous to any system that is that is oppressive or that does not appeal to everyone. And that's what it's all about with her. It's like, I just want everybody to be fair. Just be fair, just do the right thing. And I believe that when she gets of age and realizes exactly how to articulate what she really wants to say, she's going to be phenomenal.
That's one you know about. I'm guessing there are a lot of other people watching you right now. And you're planting seeds in a garden that you might not even see sprouting.
Right. And that's an honor. I'm privileged of that. I didn't intend for it. I was just doing what I thought was right. And I am excited about the future of Troy, even Montgomery County, and I'm just glad to be a part of it.
3 big takeaways for me from that interview. First, being mayor is hard. How do you deal with it when a bypass diverts all the traffic around your town? If you fix up a part of your town that's struggling, what's it going to do to property values? And will that drive out lower income people? How do you convince your residents that the tide needs to rise and it needs to raise all boats? Small town mayors or town managers have to deal with those issues every day. So the next time you get ready to go in and complain about a pothole, start at least with a quick thank you for the time they're giving. Then talk about the pothole. Second, a reminder that we like to think we can shield our children from what's going on in the world, that if we just wall them off, they might be protected. But if you don't tell them, they're going to get it from someone else. Mayor Allgood wanted her children to know about the KKK, so they went to the rally, listened, and then she and her husband were there to help the children process it. Finally, just a reminder that more often than we think, people are noticing what we do and what we don't do, our children, our friends, our colleagues at work. If you're mayor, that turns out to be a lot of people. But even if you don't choose to run for office, Mayor Allgood's advice is important. Be a voice for something you care about and believe in somewhere. And if more of us do that, North Carolina can be first in future. That's our show for today. Thanks to Renee Potts for booking our guests, to Kirsten Chang for getting the word out, to James Herrick for putting the show together. I'm Leslie Boney. For all of us at NC State's Institute for Emerging Issues, thanks for listening. If you like the show, subscribe and tell a friend. We're back every week with stories of forward-looking North Carolinians. One more thing. Registration's now open for our February 10th forum, Reconnect to Technological Opportunity. We hope you'll sign up and join us in Raleigh that day. Boney out. See you in the future.
Thank you for listening to First in Future, where emerging ideas take flight. This weekly podcast has been presented by the Institute for Emerging Issues at North Carolina State University. Please visit us online at emergingissues.org.